Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm Adam Steele, and this is Miles from DCA, the man who knows about your ears.
I try. Definitely try.
So in today's video, we're going to talk about why using in-ears is important and you can get them wrong, and how to kind of approach in-ears for playing shows without damaging your hearing, of why they can be beneficial and how you can really avoid making some major mistakes. So, tell us about what you do, because you are quite a particular kind of company, aren't you?
Yeah, so I mean, my background is as a musician and a sound engineer predominantly, but then I went into in-ear monitors basically, so predominantly custom in-ear monitors. So that's, you'll see lots of people using them at shows. So if anybody has, you watch any kind of festival stage or any kind of live professional stage, you'll see people with molded things in their ears, which look really nice and flat and pretty flash looking. That's basically what I do now, which is really cool. And they are a wonderful tool that is being adopted by loads of people now. I mean, like, so we met through live sound, live music, you know, performing together and stuff. And actually now, even at any level, people are using in-ears, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that I've definitely found over the last year or so, working with people and getting them into using in-ears properly. It's something you can actually get wrong. And there's this kind of myth, I suppose, that using in-ears is straight away a default way of, it's like a safe thing to do. But actually, like with anything, listening to something loud in the wrong kind of way kind of goes wrong. So yeah, it's something I'm pretty passionate about, I suppose. Yeah.
You can see it. I mean, the one thing that I will mention straight off the bat is that right now, I believe you are the only person in the UK that does this thing that is behind me that isn't just located in London, basically.
Yes, yeah. So we are the UK's only, actually the world's only fully independent 3D ear scanning specialist for custom in-ear monitors. So you'll probably see people getting like custom molds done with putting like goop in their ear, basically.
Yeah.
Which makes a physical. It's not particularly nice. It's not particularly bad, but it's also like making a physical impression of your ear. So you squirt some kind of silicone mold in there, it goes hard, and then you have to twist it out. Whereas what we do is we create a perfect digital model of your ear instead. So we use that to build it from. So all the people that we work with, so like ACS, Custom, 64 Audio, Fur Audio, we are modeling your in-ear monitors in 3D anyway. So we're taking a 3D image, or we'd be taking a physical version of your ear, digitizing it, and then modeling it in 3D. So what we're doing is basically we're just using cutting edge technology to cut out the middleman, basically. So it's making a digital image straight away. It's kind of quicker, safer, less invasive, and kind of nicer. Right, yeah. In many ways, I reckon. So yeah, we're the only people doing it, and yeah, we've had some wicked results so far, which is pretty cool.
Good stuff. You've been working with some pretty big names recently. If you would care to clang a couple of...
I wouldn't want to... No, I can't necessarily clang too many. But
there's at least one that I know that you've publicly announced, which is Architects you've been working with.
Yeah, that's true. So we were working with Architects recently, and there's a few other people that we're kind of working with as things are growing and developing, which is really cool. So yeah, they're all 64 Audio artists. So we've been working with their engineers to get them scanned to build up some new in-ears for their tour. They're, at the time of recording, they've just finished a run with Metallica, and they're going on a big European run now. So yeah, it's interesting. It's Absolutely. Good fun. So we're going to go down to work with them again soon in a couple of months, which is pretty sick.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's good fun.
So for me, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this is really one of the reasons why I've not had custom in-ears in the past is really don't like the idea of having goop shoved down my ears.
Yeah.
Because this is, as a living, you know, I'm like, if you pour stuff down my ear and it goes wrong, that could be, which I don't know if it ever does go wrong, but there's that fear that plays on your mind. Totally.
And the thing is, like, so my background's as a musician as well. Like, I don't want anything anywhere near my eardrum. Like you say, these are, if something goes wrong, you potentially lose immediately like 4 to 6 weeks worth of work.
Yeah.
Because someone's, you know, accidentally poked your eardrum in the wrong way, or you've got an infection or something like that, and it's like horrible. So that's why I've decided to only adopt this. And I found that there's a few people like using similar systems in like the States and things like that, but there's no one doing it in the UK, and I didn't quite understand why. There's several reasons why, but it's now like we've got this exclusively in the UK, which is really cool. So we create this. Rather than having goop shoved down your ear, it's a tiny laser probe which uses 2 highly sensitive lasers and tiny HD cameras to basically develop a picture of your ear, which is so sick. And we create this digital model which we send directly on email to people. So it works really, really well. And yeah, for me, it just makes complete sense. Like,
the other reason is that the only people who do or have done this in the past are based in London, which if you think of England, you think, oh, everybody can just get to London. It's a tiny island. It's a lot bigger than you think.
Yeah, it's a lot further as well. And that's the thing. Like everything in-ear monitoring related is kind of, I'm based up in Birmingham in the Midlands, and obviously you're up here in Manchester. So it's like the world doesn't necessarily all revolve around London in terms of music now, especially not now where there's so many different places you can go to. So it's like, I wanted to be somebody who could get out and about and kind of see people where you're at, you know, and it makes more sense. And it's totally mobile, can kind of go anywhere, do anything. As long as people got clean ears, we're kind of happy days, really.
Yeah. So at this point, Miles is going to scan my ears and we'll report back afterwards.
Cool. So what we're going to do then is, in terms of demo and stuff, I like you to decide what you like the sound of. Okay. So I normally do like a bit of a winner stays on style scenario where you can listen to one and listen directly against the second one. So you obviously, like you reference in speakers, you can tell exactly what the differences are and how they sound. So I think what we'll do is this might take a little bit of time, so maybe we'll just kind of time lapse this and rattle through it, and you can just kind of end up with 2, and then we can have a little natter about those, and then we'll decide which one you want to get, and then we'll get you scanned. Right,
so are we looking for what I like, or are we looking for something specific?
I reckon what you like for now, because at the end of the day, ultimately, what you like is what you're going to want to listen to the most. And with this kind of in-ear, compared to what you've used before with like generics and stuff like that, these are all, the selection I've got here are all really good reference monitors anyway. So I think they'd all do a job. It just depends on which one you like the best and which one you think suits the way that you like to listen to stuff.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Grand. Cool.
Interestingly, with these are set quite flat, these monitors, but when I work on headphones, they usually have a smiley curve. So we'll see what kind of...
which one you like
appeals to that. Right.
Cool. Happy days.
So let's just make sure I've got a song.
Yeah.
There we go. I mean, we're not going to hear anything. Yeah. Cool.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I always like to say, like, choose something that you know, obviously, so you can pick out certain parts of the song that you know and you like, and you know what you're kind of listening for.
Yeah.
Generally helps.
Just make sure the right outputs are on. All that. Yep. Looks like we're good.
Spaceship is on. It's all good.
We're on dim there. Right. Cool. So yeah, headphones are set about medium. We'll soon find out whether that's too much or not.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool, man. So
it's funny, I've found with like drummers with non-custom
IEMs,
the volume might be quite high, but then as soon as I got a guy on customs, it's all above like 3, and they're like, turn it down!
Oh, mate, yeah, 100%. Like, so the one thing I would say is when you go from generics to customs, so again, the iPhone analogy, if I can listen to a set of normal headphones or generic in-ear monitors, they might be set at halfway or maybe just above, so maybe like out of 10, like 5 or 6, maybe 7. But with my customs, it's on like 2.
Right.
Because they are literally so far in your ear, they are literally probably 4 or 5 mil away from your eardrum itself.
Right.
So there is not a lot of space for that sound to travel. So you significantly reduce the amount of volume that you need in order to listen to it.
Well then.
Cool.
So what are these?
So these ones are the ACSs. So these are the dual driver versions. These are the 3 drivers. So these are the engages.
Okay.
I reckon, to be honest, I think there's for what you need. There's no need to listen to the like dual drivers without a crossover, because I think realistically, for what you do, you need a crossover. You need a crossover.
Yeah. Okay.
So much better. So yeah, we'll kind of have a little listen to these and see how you go.
Right. One or the other.
So let's go. This is for number one. So these guys are prototypes as well, by the way. So we're the only people in the UK to have them. With ACS, which is kind of cool. So they fit most people's ears, but you might have to sit and hold them in a smidge.
Right.
To get them to seal properly.
This section of this song's got kind of quite a big low end, but not a boomy low end.
Gotcha.
So on the wrong system, it's just not there.
Yeah.
And so to me, these sound like the high end is kind of rounded off, and it's very kind of mid-range 1K focused, which might be quite good for a singer.
I think if you might need to push them in a little bit more.
Okay.
So it sounds like they're sealing quite well, but you want them to be like snugly fit in.
Oh, hello. Yeah. Right.
Because these do have quite a decent low end on them.
Right.
So yeah, if you're getting like...
Yeah, well, the low end seemed quite reasonable, but the high end was not there, but it was quite neutral, I would say.
Yeah.
There's this weird moment in the song where there's like a transient flip, and it just always makes my eyes water. But when it's done right, with poor headphones, it's not there.
Yeah. Fair.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean now. With them deeper in, the bass is fuller.
Yeah.
But it's still quite neutral.
Yeah.
And the top end for me definitely is quite neutral on these.
Yeah.
Which is, it's nice.
Cool. So then
versus these.
Yeah, so that's got a low and a high. This is low, mid, and high. So these are the triple driver. These are the evolves.
Right. Oh, hello. I've not even got the other one in yet, and the high end is suddenly sparkling at me. I'll leave it running. I've just wound it back to the right kind of place. Yeah, the high end for me on these, it's not more high end, but it's more transient, it's more defined. Yeah, suddenly the 3D kind of stereo imaging is there. Suddenly, because this song's it's a good reference, it's got like little ticky things that move.
Okay.
And a lot of kind of gentle synth stuff that, I mean, those were good, but these I can suddenly pick things out.
Yeah.
And yeah, the hi-hat's not overly bright in this song, but I can now hear it going tick, 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 tick.
Right.
Yeah, for me that's quite a marked difference for what I'm looking for. These are much closer.
Yeah, so in theory, like, you've got low and a mid-high in those guys, but in this you've got the three-way crossover, so you've got low, mid-high, and it's kind of got a lot more mid-range and a lot more, like, a way better extension than the highs. Like, I think low-end wise for me, it might feel a little bit more subtle in the triples than it does in the duals, but again, that's just because of what that speaker's being asked to do, as you all know. Like, so just spreading it out a little bit more just gives you that way bigger space, way more depth.
A lot of it as well, I think, is kind of because they've obviously been tuned by ACS to a certain level.
Yeah.
For me, it's not just about how they sound, it's what they're capable of, and they can be quite a different thing.
Exactly.
Like the big Odysseys I was talking about, they are relatively flat with a bit of a high mid-peak. They don't have a huge sub, but I specifically in my profile bump the sub up, and they're capable of it.
Yeah.
Which, so if I was mixing, I would probably add a little more sub frequency into what I'm doing, but if they can handle it, great.
Totally, and I think that's the main difference when you've got, there is definitely like the whole kind of how many drivers is the right number of drivers kind of thing, and as you go up to ones with like a much higher driver count, like the harder critic ones, like 64/18s for example, the headroom is just so much bigger because you've just got, it's like having a way higher wattage amp, like you've just got so much more space to deal with. But with the soft silicon ones, actually, the guys don't actually need to go that high because of the way they're built and the way they tune them. They tune them really neutrally so that you've got a wicked extension, and because they've got such good isolation, the fit's so good, they've got loads of headroom. They've never kind of not done what I needed them to do, and actually lots of engineers travel and tour with the triples now because they are so flat and reliable.
Right.
And because the levels you're doing them at, they can push whatever you need it to.
Yes.
Which is super interesting.
Yeah.
So those are the main two,
Okay.
I would say. So yeah, like I said, I don't actually have the 5s, which is really frustrating to try. But I think
That's fine, because of course there's diminishing returns.
yeah,
I'm not, like I said, I'm probably not going to spend most of my time mixing with these, but I need to be able to pick out low end and high end,
100%.
especially as a singing bass player, which is a slightly odd.
I mean, like that's yeah.
Yeah, I need to be able to pick out the sibilance on the vocal, but also the low end on the bass.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a bit of an unusual use case.
But also, one thing I would say as well is obviously, kind of, especially in a live environment, bass tone, that kind of mid-rangey, lower mid kind of growl and bite, kind of 400 to 600 hertz kind of thing. You need to be able to manipulate that however you need to in that room, and you need to be able to hear it.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas with the dual driver system, that kind of it's getting lumped together with all the real low frequency stuff. Whereas with the 3-way one, you've got that mid driver which is kind of taking over that duty a little bit more.
Yes.
So you've got a lot more scope for the in-ear working for you, so you can make better decisions.
Huh.
So that's the theory.
Well, it seems to translate that way for me on first impression, which I've spent a lot of the last few weeks, as it happens, monitoring different new setups and different speakers and different headphones, and so I'm kind of quite attuned at the moment.
Yeah.
Luckily, that this all kind of panned out well.
Yeah.
I know what I'm looking for, and I can't put a name on it. That's the hardest part, which is really annoying for YouTube. But yeah, the 2-driver ones, the blue ones, I could hear everything, but especially things like the tick 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 on the hi-hat, I had to listen past a little bit to get that, which I think if I was looking for a guitar tone and a vocal, that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
But if I'm on the other side of the stage from the drummer and they start adding a little kind of tick 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 on the hi-hat, as the bass player, my job is usually to lock in with those details.
100%, yeah.
Whereas the guitarist usually locks in with what I do.
Yes.
So it's less of an issue.
Yeah, guitarists are kind of fill in space, whereas the rhythm section's driving everything forward, right? It's a lot. I don't think many people who aren't bass players fully understand the kind of intricacies of what you actually need to do.
Yes.
And I'll say that as a guitarist and a vocalist, it's it's kind of black magic to me. Like I do understand kind of what you're doing, but it's a real skill, like you're saying. You need to be able to react, and it's the dynamics of it all, right?
The way I would describe that kind of interaction between a drummer and a bass player, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And if you can't hear half the words, you can't have a very good conversation.
No.
So
No.
that's how I would put it.
Good way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Okay, so while you're putting those away, because we've just been having fun with other brands, just because we can.
Because we can, yeah.
But we've decided, definitely going for the 3 drivers, because that's much more appropriate to me and what I do.
Yeah, I think so.
It's scanning time.
Let's zap your brains.
850 watts. Ding!
Nice.
Oh, he's getting the gloves on now.
Right, cool, man. So the first step, obviously, I need to just double check that your ears are nice, clean and clear. So we've decided you're going to go for some ACS Evolves. So we're going to just take a standard closed jaw impression for this one. So just nice relaxed jaw is fine. We don't have to have a bite block, even though you're a vocalist, where you traditionally need something like opening your mouth. With the ACS ones, because they're soft silicon, they're going to flex. So
right, okay.
That's absolutely fine. So I'll just...
So if they were the hard ones, I'd need to have my mouth open, basically.
Yes, yeah,
right,
yeah,
okay.
definitely. Whereas with these ones, it's absolutely fine. Yeah. Cool, man.
Take these off so they're out of my way.
Nice one. So I'm just going to have a quick look in your ear and make sure they are free from wax. And
right.
Let's see how we go.
If they're not, let's get the drill.
Or the Henry Hoover out the cupboard. All right. Do you want the good news or the bad news?
Bad news first.
You are. Unfortunately, man, you are completely bunged up with wax on both ears.
Huh.
So we won't be able to do the scan today.
Ow.
Unfortunately.
Right.
But so this is fairly common. So this is actually a good lesson, really. Yeah. So all impressions, the cleaner your ears are, the better. But on this one, the scanner is really good with it's actually slightly more tolerant to wax than traditional impressions is.
Okay.
But even with ours, your So we normally talk about it in terms of like percent, I suppose blockage. On yours, it's probably up around like 85-90%.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So like
I have had ear trouble when I was a kid, and I got my ears micro-suctioned over COVID. So
oh nice, okay. Well then
it's come back basically.
yeah,
Right.
but that's totally natural. It's
Okay.
the kind of thing that will normally like work its way out. But I imagine maybe because of professionals, because of what we do, we're always listening to stuff, got cans on, in-ears in, speakers on and stuff, it can sometimes kind of show up a little bit more. So what we'll have to do is we will reconvene at another date. I'll have to get your ears cleaned out, but then we'll kind of come back up and get you scanned, and then once we've done that, we can literally send the files over straight to ACS.
Okay, now my ears have been fixed. I'm at Miles's place at his office because I'm on the way to do something else. So today, there we are. I'm gonna get my ears scanned here instead.
You have your kind of jaw set up in the scan as well. So
Oh, jaw setup.
yeah, so like
Okay.
basically you can have an open jaw impression. So that's when your ear can now change its shape slightly. So imagine if it's like an S bend. So if it's when your jaw's relaxed, it sits like this, but when you open your mouth, it actually stretches out a little bit. So I've got some images I'll show you, and put them on screen now if you like, of how it looks. But it's a subtle difference. But it means if you're a vocalist, for example, or an MD or somebody talking a lot, if you move your mouth too much and you've got hard acrylic in-ears, for example, your in-ears might move and the seal might change. So what we want to do, especially as a vocalist yourself, we want to find something that will move with your ear or be a best fit for your ear.
Right.
So the cool thing about ACS is because they're soft silicon, so they're squidgy. So that means you can have a relaxed jaw impression just with your mouth closed. And then as you sing and you move, your in-ears will move with your ear canal.
Right.
So that's ones I've got. I've just got relaxed jaw impressions, which they've built mine from, and you keep the seal no matter what you do, no matter how you make your face look during those kind of big notes or whatever.
Right.
So
That's interesting, because that's something that like I found a lot in shows especially when I'm singing. I always wondered if it was just from being kind of sweaty during the show, but maybe it is the jaw thing
totally, yeah.
that they would come out. Especially
Yeah.
one particular one, which is probably an ear shape thing.
Yeah, definitely. So,
Because, non-custom in-ears, they're both the same shape. Why would one keep popping out?
yeah,
Must be something to do with my ear shape.
everyone, I mean, from the people that I've worked with, generally, so everyone's ears are different. They're like a fingerprint. They are perfectly unique. They're kind of similar a lot of the time, but they're also, you might find someone with like a wildly different shaped kind of outer ear or kind of concha bowl, or someone might have a slightly skinnier ear canal than the other side and stuff like that. And that's why when you go, I've got a set of in-ears and they're great and one size fits all, they don't necessarily, and again, that's something we'll kind of touch on later, like how they seal is super important. And obviously the best way of doing it is getting some customs that fit perfectly to your ear.
Yeah.
But yeah, that will be a reason why. And also the way your jaw moves is like so different. So for me as a vocalist, my right ear seems to move more than my left ear. Don't know why, just does. So
Right.
when I use universals, it will be always the right ear that's kind of like wiggling loose,
Right.
which is strange. Whereas the left one's always like rock solid. So there's all these little nuances that you don't necessarily know until you start thinking about them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's like, all you think, oh, it's just a set of headphones. I stick them on my ears and off I go. But there's like, it's like with anything, you can be as confusing and complicated as you want, but everyone is totally different. So yeah, that would be a reason. So have you, when you're performing and stuff like that, how often are you using in-ears? Are you generally a kind of wedges on the floor kind of guy, bass amp, lots of energy in the room, or are you using in-ears for
I'm the opposite way around. I'm
Okay.
as much in-ears as possible.
easy loadout?
Yeah, well, there is that, absolutely that. But I'm a sound guy as well,
Yep.
as we know. And I don't even like taking a bass amp because I try and have all the sound come out front of house.
Nice.
And so it also means there's limited bleed on stage, so the drums are cleaner,
Yep.
which you would hope would make the drummer not hit as hard, but that's never the
No,
case. And so I've got more control over what I'm hearing as well,
Yeah.
which for me is a big thing, because I definitely don't want kind of room resonances, because as anyone who has toured will know, the room is different every night.
Totally.
If you were in the same room every night and you could get comfortable with a certain situation, that's one thing. But sometimes I'll be playing in a tent which has
Nothing.
no reflections, and sometimes I'll be playing in like a grade 1 listed hall that echoes when you sneeze.
Yeah.
And so everything is different, and so every resonance, every reflection is completely different. And often we don't have time, because of the way that we do what we do, to change the entire thing.
No, definitely not.
But with in-ears, it's so small, the changes that I'd have to make.
Yeah.
That consistency is a big thing for me, because then I know what to expect.
Exactly. And also then you kind of know what the audience is going to get as well, which is obviously, because when you're a gigging musician, you're a performer, you're a professional performer, you're there to give the best version of what you're doing to the audience so they can enjoy themselves, right? If you're then faffing around and mucking about because stuff's not quite right, or things are feeding back and things like, if it doesn't sound consistent every night, then you can't always provide the best sound for your audience. So therefore you've kind of failed in a way as a musician. Like your job, especially if you're running the gig yourself, like this is like, obviously if you've got an engineer and people working with you, it's totally different, because you've got someone looking after you. Like all the yeah, exactly, all the top bands who have got engineers for that reason, they turn up and they go, this is my art, I'm on stage, this is my world, your job is to make what I do here get out there. Whereas most musicians, gigging musicians, jobbing musicians have got that luxury, you know.
No,
we turn up as a 3-piece and it's 3 people, for example, making the best noise that they can, and you've got to be consistent. You've got to try your best to make it as good as possible.
That's it. And I mean, even like, you would think that every major touring band has a monitor engineer, but that's less and less true now, because budgets are going down, because it costs a lot more to put the gas in the tank. You know, so like Monuments, they're friends of mine. I've been their backline tech on a few tours now. They don't have a dedicated monitor engineer, but they do have in-ears for everybody with their own stereo mixes coming from their own separate passive split of a whole mix system.
Yeah.
So the very minimal things that will happen is if I'm not there on a tour, quite often the drummer, Mike, will have a phone or an iPad that he can adjust the mixes, but it's distracting. So they try and get me to do that for them. But because it's all in-ears, it's so minimal.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was Wedges, that would be impossible.
Yes.
Because they would be, you know, constantly, you know, adjusting for the room and all that kind of stuff, which, especially as a support act, you don't have that luxury.
No.
You turn up and you go.
Yeah, you get what you're given a lot of the time, and also you get the space that you're allocated, and you just kind of got to run with it, haven't you?
Yeah.
You have to, so...
And that doesn't matter how big a band you are or how famous you are. Sometimes the travel journey in between 2 shows is so long, you turn up at like 2 p.m. and you're on stage at 6 p.m. Yeah. And the main band had to load in and sound check first. So it doesn't matter how, you know, well you set things up.
It's true.
So yeah, we're minimizing risk. Is a main thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, for a lot of people who go, oh, I don't like the feel of in-ears, or like, you know, there's not as much vibe or whatever, it's yes. But by the same token, if you can turn up somewhere you've never been and within 30 minutes have the whole band set up and perform a show consistently like that, that's way more important.
Oh, totally. And you can also make it sound good for yourself. And if you all commit to it, that's the thing. Like if everyone's on the same page and you've got, I mean, like digital mixers are so affordable now. Good wireless systems are affordable now. Wired systems are so affordable now. Like it's kind of, and one thing that I try and impress on people as well is, especially young people kind of coming into the industry now, it's kind of an expectation that you'll know how to use in-ears.
Yeah.
Whether you're in a function band, a touring band, a theatre show, whatever.
Yeah.
Wherever you are, if someone goes, this show's on ears, you've got to be able to do it as well. So it's kind of, if you can get on to understanding it a little bit more straight away, it kind of will help. But yeah, the consistency thing is mega, and you'll find that 90% of the top tier of whatever world you work in, it's all on ears generally now.
Well, this is something we were talking about off camera though, is that it's worth mentioning the top 5% where maybe they don't use in-ears and they do use wedges.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Totally.
Because at that level, they're usually playing on stages that are the size of a small country. So there's so much physical separation between musicians. Like the drums are not this far away from you.
No.
They have a lot more control.
Unless you're on like a club show or something, like if someone turns you play a smaller venue in a main city, or like
Sure.
Motley Crue, Gods of War did Camden Underworld a couple of weeks ago. They just
Right.
turned up and did it.
Right.
It's like a really intimate show, but I don't know how they did it there, but the main thing is they've got a monitor engineer.
Yes.
They've got someone looking after them. And when you've got like big bands, so like, I mean, the big artists like the Rolling Stones and like Paul McCartney and all these bands who've been doing it for a long time, even like Guns N' Roses at Glastonbury and stuff like that, they've got an engineer looking after them. And even if they are using Wedges, it's super controlled and they've got the time, space and kind of clout to do that and make
Yeah.
it work.
And even with Wedges, then you have to basically stand in one spot.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Or have someone chasing you across
Yeah.
the stage and switching stuff up as you go.
Yeah, multiple monitors. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and if you've got an absolute genius behind the board and the equipment to do it, that's one thing, and that is
Yeah.
great. But yeah, most people don't have that.
Exactly.
That's why bands like, I'm pretty sure Metallica use in-ears now because the kind of
Yeah.
show they do, they move around so much.
Yeah.
They couldn't do it with Wedges.
No.
They have to do it with in-ears to make it work.
I think at some points they do. I think they do have some like infills and stuff in certain places
Right.
for certain things and certain moments. But like they are on in-ears. They are running a set of they're completely sealed off to the outside world. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
But they've got a wicked monitor engineer who's running the show for them, and it's like you say, in that kind of like in the round snake pit style stage.
Yeah.
You've got like the environment you're in, although it's massive, you've still got stuff firing all over the place. So it's like you've got so much information in the room. How do you control it? So like in-ears is the best way of getting a wicked sounding mix to you directly, so you can hear everything.
Yeah.
You've got off stage communication. You've got like click tracks. You've got playback. You've got talk tracks. People prompting you and cueing stuff in your ears as well. It's like it's a whole world, and that's when it goes from like being just a gig to being a proper production.
Yes. And yeah, at that point, you very much need to be on the sealed systems. Things like click tracks. The audience don't want to hear that.
You can't have that coming through a wedge.
No.
You just can't.
Yeah,
like,
just
that's just so annoying. And like, someone coming through like saying verse 2 now. You can't have that like blasting across the stage in a quiet bit. And stuff like that.
And that happens a lot, not just on like rock shows, but let's say something like a theatre show, like, I don't know, We Will Rock You or something like that. The musical director is watching the stage for the performers, the theatrical performers. So he will then be directing the rest of the band, going, right, play the same 8 bars again.
Yeah.
Because maybe someone's tripped and fallen on the stage and they're struggling to get off, or something, anything.
Yeah.
It happens, and they have to be able, without it coming over speakers and going, let's keep going, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or just relying on hand gestures to kind of keep stuff going. There's
only so much you can do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to be really specific sometimes.
Yeah.
And all the top function bands as well, like who are all slick musicians who, might have the privilege of touring with people when they're not working, but then are playing at all sorts of events. Even like some just regular like function bands are also have a live MD. So they've got someone, you might have a band that's made up of, I mean, we've probably both been in this position, been in a band where you've just been thrown together.
Yes.
And you go, right, here's the set list, here's what we're doing, off you go. Sometimes you need somebody in your ear to go, oh, by the way, the key's changed because the singer can't sing it in C, it needs to be in D, or something, change it.
And you don't want to hear that over the PA system.
Exactly.
Yes,
Or,
I've had that a few times.
Yeah.
One of the bands that I work with, one of my friends, Josh, he will quite often not give me a set list.
Really?
Yeah, and he'll just start playing. And sometimes he'll know the riff and I'll know the riff and I'll pick it up. But sometimes, like say, if there's going to be a key change or whatever, I'm trained well enough with what I do to be able to handle a key change.
Of course.
If I know it's coming.
Yeah.
And so he will literally, or sometimes he might just say, because he'll have a second microphone just to the corner.
Yeah.
And so that one doesn't come out the front of the house.
No.
And he'll just lean into it and go, okay, well, I'm going to do this, extend the solo.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Go around another 8 bars.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Stop, kind of thing.
And because everybody's dancing in the crowd, they don't see that. But we go, right, okay, great.
Yeah, it's the one thing that really separates or can separate you from the audience, but not in a kind of separating you in the way that you're not enjoying it anymore,
Yeah.
but more like you're in your own world, you're taking your level up a
Yes.
little bit.
Well, it's doing a job. That's the thing,
Yeah.
and it's just adding an extra mechanic, I think,
Yeah.
into being able to do your job well.
Yeah, and it's another thing as well, like when you've got digital systems, like you said, like the Monuments guys, you've got a system which is plumbed in, it's in a rack, it just works.
Yeah.
Every gig, you turn up and you plug in the same cables into the same space, you turn it on, and it does the same thing.
Yes.
Like, I mean, take Architects as an example. They're all running Neural DSP. So they've got no amps on stage. It's
Yep.
just a rack with some QCs in it, quad cortexes.
Yeah.
And it's literally, that goes into the board. They've got drum mics and 4 QCs, some synths and some vocal mics, and then playback. In terms of that, it's relatively simple from a kind of black and white point of view. So they can turn up to any venue, anywhere, and they know that their in-ears will sound the same. And they'll be at a decent level because they've got someone looking after them. It's not going to get too loud. It's going to sound great. It's going to vibe. And they'll put on a good show, and they just worry about doing what they do. And they can, you know, take the mick out of each other and
Yeah.
talk to each other on stage and work that stuff out rather than having to worry about sound. But I think that level used to be like, it's up here and that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas now that level is like the bandwidth of what's available is mad. So
It's filtering down to us humans.
as mere mortals, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
That's the thing. I'm not in a band like Architects. But a lot of the gigs that I do, you have to be good. You have to be right.
Uh-huh.
But it's not that kind of 20,000 people turning up to see me.
Yeah.
They turn up to see a band.
Yeah.
And they have no idea who I am. And at the end of the night, they'll probably still have no idea who I am. But
Yeah.
if we've done a great job, and we're not all walking away going, "Ugh,"
Yeah.
which I have done.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah, then that's the win. Is that if we walk away and we're not all going, "Oh, good God, I don't want to ever do that again."
yeah,
Because I've definitely done gigs where either I've not got my in-ears or something's broken, or
yeah.
then it can the worst ones are when that happens and it's in a really reflective room,
Yeah.
because there's
definitely.
nothing you can do. There's no way you can EQ out an actual cymbal reflecting off the wall.
Exactly. And there's no way you can turn it down either, especially when you kind of ramp up towards the end of the gig. You might be fine, but your ears can only protect you so much.
Yeah.
It gets to a point where you will cross the threshold of what is safe.
Yeah.
And interestingly, even if you've got in-ears and you're at that point, if the level around you is too loud and you've not got decent isolation, then your in-ears aren't going to save you. You're just going to keep turning them up to kind of block out that sound, but actually start razzing your ears in a different way. That's why customs are really good, because they give you that assurance. But what I find with a lot of people as well is they're using kind of decent universal ones, well-known branded universals and even cheaper stuff, but they're just not getting them fitting right. So they're like caning their ears night on night and wondering why their ears are still ringing.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't like in-ears. There's no word, and sometimes it can even be worse. Like I've definitely, when I was a little bit less educated about stuff now, I've definitely done gigs with in-ears that weren't right.
Yeah.
Ran them too loud, taken them out, and the stage has been quieter than I've had my in-ears in.
Right.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
Like to think that that's a thing.
It's so easily done though. Once you've got your level set up, like I always had my volume on a pack.
Yeah.
On the pack that I have, it's just a big knob that you can just easily
Reach the turn
do.
up, yeah.
And so it would probably be set around 50% while I'm getting the levels.
Uh-huh.
Start this set with the gentle songs, get all the
Yeah.
grandmas dancing. By the end of it, you're doing Living on a Prayer and the drummer's smacking it.
Yeah.
And all I can hear is drums and I can't pick my voice out.
Mm-hmm.
So to stop me from blowing my voice out, I turn up the ears so I can hear myself over him.
Yeah.
But in the middle of a set, I don't have the ability to then change the mix because my hands are tied.
Yeah.
And I'm performing, so I can't just stop the song and go and
Tweak stuff.
so it's just loud.
Yeah.
But I can pitch my voice so I can save my voice, but at the cost of everything else.
Yeah.
And it's a short-term trade-off.
Yeah.
But I can only trade that off for so long, especially if I'm doing 2 or 3 shows in 2 or 3 nights.
Yeah.
The first night, if I had to do that, the second night, I might have an okay voice, but my ears are gone. Or if I
Yeah.
didn't do that, then my voice is gone.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I'm cracking all over the place.
Exactly.
So yeah, and coming back to the thing that one of my ears would keep falling out, that's something that's worth talking about, because it feels better for about 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, it feels okay, I can hear the room, I can hear some of the guitarist's amp reflecting off the wall maybe.
Yeah. You feel
And then
reconnected.
For 60
moment.
seconds until the ear damage starts to set in and everything dulls down and you've got that going on.
Yeah.
Oh, I see so many musicians where they've got one ear in.
Yeah.
That's awful, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I tell you why. And this is kind of, again, this is another reason why I wanted to get in touch with you, to so we could drill down into this a little bit. Like, I don't physically know the difference in terms of like a really accurate difference, but it's around kind of 10, 15 decibels difference between your ear that's protected and the ear that's open. So let's say you're in a room that's 100 dB, right? But you're monitoring at like 86. So your left ear, that is fine, and it's got your inner in it. If you're at 86 decibels here, you can listen to, in that ear is safe for 8 hours.
Right.
So that's kind of
more than a show.
More than a show, like a whole evening, your sound, right? And then this ear that's at 100 can maybe only survive for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, until it starts to go into panic mode and you start actually damaging your hearing. So you've got, if you do a 1 hour set with one ear in, one ear out, you've got one ear that's fine, and you've got one ear that has just spent 3/4 of an hour becoming damaged. And you'll have like hearing damage in one ear, and one ear will be fine, but your brain, because it's so clever, will kind of adjust how you hear it and how it feels to like kind of redistribute stuff, so it doesn't feel overly odd in the moment.
Yeah.
But long term, if you do that, you will end up with one ear that's slightly duller than the other, and you'll have like there's something called temporary threshold shift, which is super interesting.
Okay.
So basically, in terms of like frequency, imagine like, so you say you go to a gig, right, and you're stood in a pub and it's quite loud, and then you go outside and you and your mates after a couple of hours are like shouting to each other, or you like kind of everything feels a little bit muffled, like you've got like a hat on over your ears or something.
Yeah.
What happens is the way the sound comes into your ear, it gets transmitted from your eardrum through your bones in your ear and into your cochlea, which sends the signals to your brain, right? So that main bit that we need to know about is between your eardrum and your cochlea, there's these bones which are moving like this, like a speaker cone, right?
Okay.
So when your ears go into this temporary threshold shift, what you're actually doing is your ears are tightening up. So rather than the movement going like this, it goes like it tightens up, so it takes more pressure and more power to move it, because you've basically gone over your exposure time and your ears are now freaking out.
Right.
So in tightening up, like if you had a tweeter against a subwoofer, so the sub needs to move big power, low frequencies, and then it's all the high frequency detail that comes out of a tweeter, so that kind of fast, rapid movement, you lose all that. So that's why all the high frequencies in your ears roll off, because your ears physically are turning, say, we can't transmit that information, we're going to transmit the minimal information that takes the biggest amount of power. So you get all that low frequency information, everything sounds muffled, but your ears are going, the super sensitive stuff, we're going to protect you from that, time to leave.
Right.
So you've got one ear that's in that mode, freaking out, and you've got one ear that's like, I could do this all day, this sounds great, kind of thing.
So your brain goes, this is fine.
Basically, yeah, it kind of works itself out. So that's why it's really important, and I say to anyone that I work with, both ears in all the time, especially with like customs, when you've got such good isolation on one side, you'll end up completely skew if. Never do that. I mean, some in-ear manufacturers used to do that. They used to be like, sell a set. I think it was Ultimate Ears, had like the UE4s or something. You could buy one side. Right. But again, it's the whole reason, like you'd have people with one ear in all the time thinking they're safe because they've got custom molds, but actually you're maybe, 20 dB out and kind of roasting one side of you and not the other. So these are all things you've got to be kind of aware of.
I think the only time I've seen a one-sided set that made sense, because it's a much more niche case, I think, than you would think, is one of the guys in JLS, Pop Act, where they would be on a silent stage and he did like backflips and stuff, so I think he needed his like in-ear balance.
Okay.
Because if he had two in, he was saying he'd do these stuff and it would make him dizzy.
Ah, that makes sense.
But because it was a silent stage, he was okay. But because they didn't perform with a band and they didn't have noise, that's a niche case where that could make sense. But for most of us, we perform on stages where instrument make noise? I mean,
Yeah.
it's usually drummers.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us now, bass players, guitarists, the ones who do this traveling a lot, we don't tend to make much noise on stage now unless we have to.
Yeah, totally. Modeling's such a good thing. It makes total sense to walk in with a guitar and a modeler, and it goes through the PA, and you're grand.
Well, even I'll cut the camera. This is my bass board.
Nice.
This is literally what I tour with. It's not modelling; it's real preamps and stuff, but it's got a virtual cab on it, and
Exactly.
yeah, no noise unless I need to.
Yeah.
Because if I turn up to a show and the PA is not up to spec, I can bring a bass amp and I can just send to it. But even then, I try and put that next to me firing at the crowd rather than at me.
Yeah, totally.
Because I don't need it.
No, it's a filler, isn't it? Between, especially when you've got like two satellite speakers up here throwing out. Sometimes you actually, on a wide stage, if you're like in a big conference hall or something, and like the stage is like 30 foot wide, but it's only like 4 foot deep, and you're all like basically in a line.
Yes.
You lose stuff on either side, so you do need some kind of infill.
Those are the worst ones for me for hearing damage, because the drummer will be literally next to my ear.
But only on one side. It's not like you're in front of it and it's like, because you're fronting the band, like it's not like it's even on both sides. It's you just got the crash or the ride or the hats or something. You're on one side, right?
That's it. Most stages that most of us play on are a lot less deep than you'd think they would be.
Yeah.
Usually the drummer, you would think you would have like 10 feet of space, and then they're right up on top of you.
Yeah.
And so that cymbal that is up there for them is like here for me.
Yeah.
So anyone who's done any sort of stuff with sound with an SPL meter will know that the closer you get, it shoots up in terms of the actual measured level. Because then the direct sound is right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can be an issue where I've had issues with drummers with loud snares in reflective rooms.
Yeah.
But even without a reflective room, if you're this close and they're smacking it, that is a 110, 120 dB hit that's going straight in my face.
Exactly.
And everyone in the audience is like, oh, it's fine. But firstly, a lot of them are drinking, so they don't notice.
Exactly.
They end the night shouting at each other, going, it was great, because their hearing's actually damaged.
Yep.
And they've got an extra 6 feet away from the drummer that I don't have.
Yeah. And also, a lot of the time, they don't do it every week.
Yeah.
They're not doing it all the time. So although so like if you go to a gig and you're just, say if you've just got a normal job and you work in an office 9 to 5 and you've got Colin from accounts has got his wedding on and you're like, oh, we'll go along and there's a band.
Yeah.
You have a few drinks and enjoy it. You'll go and expose yourself to it, and then you'll go home, and maybe if your ears are ringing a bit, by the next day, like the Monday or the Tuesday, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
whereas if
you're
you're
put it down to the hangover.
Exactly. Whereas if you're doing it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a bank holiday Monday as a musician, you don't get that respite. You've got it all the time. Like it's a real difference. Especially if you're on tour for a month and you're doing 28 shows in 20 days or whatever you're doing, like a heavy run, or with a theatre show, there's no time for your ears to stop and relax. So
there's no respite.
Yeah,
it's always tough. But these are the reasons why in-ear monitors are important. I mean, some in-ears are better than no in-ears.
Often, but not always.
Let's talk about that, because that's an interesting point that I, before we talked about this, would always have said, get something rather than nothing.
Yeah.
And then try and work your way up to something right.
Yes. Yeah.
But give me some reasons why it can be a bad idea.
Okay, so I do agree. If you're conservative about how you listen to your in-ears on stage, like say if you've got a silent stage and a real drum kit, then that would probably be okay because you'll get a feed of everything. But the real problem comes when you've not got isolation from the world around you, because the whole point people don't like in-ears for is they're like, oh, I feel disconnected from the crowd, I can't hear them, or like it just doesn't feel right having my guitar in my ears, I want to hear the amp in the room. All these kind of things are stuff you can work around. But if you are, for example, a vocalist who's having to strain over the sound of a really loud drum kit and you've got a bad in-ear mix, so you're cranking your volume on your pack up, I mean, like you said, you kind of set it and you kind of, oh, it's fine, we'll listen to it really loud to compensate for everything around you. You might be in a room that's like clocking on 98 decibels or something like that, which is, again, half an hour that you can listen to safely. Then if you're putting your voice directly into your ears on top of that at the same level, you're actually no safer. You're just taking out the floor wedge that would be kind of screaming at you and causing everybody else problems. You're just rebalancing your voice at that really loud level in your ears.
Right.
So if you manage to get a good isolation though, and it brings the world down from like an unsafe level like 98 dB down to, I don't know, 86 for example, like 8 hours again. If you're at that level and then you just put back in what you want, it's more likely with that isolation that you'll be listening at a safe level that you could listen to for several hours. So a lot of people that I meet they turn up and they're like, oh, I've got these, it's always like, oh, I've got these KZs from Amazon, right? Because they sound better than Shores, for example, and they're like, oh, they're cheaper, so they're wicked. I'll throw them away if they go wrong, all that kind of stuff. But the thing that people don't do is they don't take the time to make sure they fit right. So they're listening to them on stage, they're in a loud environment, and then they're cranking them up really loud to hear it, and they're like, but I'm still getting ringing ears at the end of the gig. Or like, I still, they're like, oh, I love in-ears, it sounds great, it sounds big and exciting. It's because you're not actually solving the problem at that point. You're just kind of shifting the problem from being in the room to being in your head. Right. If you see what I mean. Yes. So it's all about managing the sound level so it's safe. So in terms of that, you've got to take the time to cut yourself off and then reconnect yourself rather than go, I'm using in-ears, so by default, by proxy, I'm okay. I'm instantly better than I would be with a wedge, because a wedge that's just pointing directly at you at a reasonable level so you can just hear yourself around everything else. Yeah, you might be in an environment that's still at that kind of higher level, but it's kind of controlled. But the problem is when you've got something directly in here and it's loud, as your ears adjust to that, and things around you get louder, you're tempted to turn it up and turn it up and turn it up. And then that's when you're at the mercy of the volume control, and you'll end up, a good way I put it to people is like, if you can listen to music at home and kind of see how loud it is, like on your phone, for example, 2 or 3 clicks, right? Then go to a gig and listen to it at the same level, standing in the same place, and go, what volume am I listening to it at? And you go, oh, it's the same. I can still hear the music at the same volume, but I'm just blocking out all this noise. Then go home and listen to it on that 7 or 8 clicks and go, would I sit at home listening to my earphones this loud? Yeah. If the answer is no, then you're doing it wrong. Right. With customs, you should be able to listen to it really quietly in any environment. That's the whole point. It's blocking you out from everything else. Right. So then if you're then compensating for the environment whilst wearing in-ears, then your in-ears aren't actually doing the job they need to. In terms of a safety point of view, they're still feeding you the sound, and it might sound great. Yeah. But you're not actually protecting yourself at the same time, which is ultimately is, again, like professional or semi-professional, even amateurs who are gigging a lot in venues, and maybe if you're in a band, you're trying to get signed or whatever, and you're like really pushing it on the gigs. If you're not looking after your hearing, in a couple of years' time, you may not be able to make those decisions that you could make now, and it leads to so many other problems long term. Yeah, that's long-term hearing damage, not what we want as musicians. Yes. It's now known as music-induced hearing loss rather than noise-induced hearing loss, because there's a very specific way in which it affects your hearing as well. It's normally around 4K. You get this like lovely notch in your hearing. So that's also like kind of in general for kind of female voices that are generally a little bit higher than male voices. That's kind of where the center frequency is. So in a crowded place like a restaurant or a pub or whatever, you're trying to talk to someone, their voice just doesn't cut in the same way anymore. It's like you've dipped that part out of it, so you struggle to hear them first, and then it extends out as your damage gets worse and stuff like that. So I wonder if that feeds into the old joke of people going, oh, you never listen to me anymore. It's literally that, yeah. Maybe they're physically not. Yeah, it's so true, and it sounds daft, but yeah. So for example, noise-induced hearing loss is a similar kind of thing. If you're working in a factory back in the day, you go to work for 8 hours a day and you come home, it's like, oh, Mrs. is like, oh, you're not listening to me. Well, no, it can't actually hear you. It's not cutting in the same way, potentially. But that is not an excuse. Listen to your partners. It's funny, a lot of this is making a lot of sense to me, because like I've never had customs up to now. Cool. And quite often I would be doing things like mixing monitors for other people, or like I would do my own mix as well, so I can keep an eye on what's happening, or even with my own band. And whenever the band would keep going and I would go out of the room with my in-ears in, suddenly they would sound very thin and very kind of piercing and very like abrasive.
I think that's because in the room without the proper seal, all the low end and the low mids was filling in that gap.
100%.
So I was compensating by making a really bright, really harsh mix, which didn't feel that way because it was being filled in by everything else. And so, yeah, I've probably been purposefully, wrongly, but purposefully overloading that high mid frequency area
Yeah.
to try and feel like it's a balance.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's a big part of it, because I've definitely found one of the things that I used to do on gigs as a bit of a showpiece is in the middle of one of the songs, in the middle of Chelsea Dagger, there's this big instrumental section.
Yeah.
I would run round the crowd because I was on full wireless. So it was
Nice.
kind of, my little thing is I would run right the way around the crowd and get back to the microphone before the next singing part.
Nice.
It kept my cardio up. But on some of the bigger shows, I would really notice the mix change as I was further away.
Yeah.
Because suddenly the low end would be gone, which the low end would be from the stage rumbling from the subs and the kick drum and everything. And all the kind of the meat of the sound coming from the backs of the PA system.
Yeah.
That would all be gone. And I'd be left with this really kind of mix.
Yeah.
And then I'd get back to the microphone again and it would sound right again.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the show, I'd be like, oh, what?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. You're probably, if your isolation wasn't great, you're probably filling in, like you say, filling in the stuff so you could hear it, so it's cutting through, but you're getting enough of everything else. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's always, especially when you're running your own in-ears, there's always like a level of compromise of some sort. You will have to tweak it for different rooms and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Still, even with really good, like 26, 27 dB of isolation, there will always be a little bit that kind of comes through, especially the lower stuff, kind of with big sacks of salt water as humans. We absorb sound and energy and waves and all sorts of stuff. And there's bone conduction in rooms. Like there's loads of stuff that adds to it. But you should have a you should be able to listen to stuff on stage and go, that sounds sick. And then you should be able to go and stand at the back of the room and go, still sounds sick. Like it still sounds good.
Yeah.
Like you should be able to have that kind of level of control.
Right. And that's a good clue as to that your isolation is right and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're getting what you need, not what you can. Yeah, you're not
what not making do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because that was always the thing for me, is it's making do of, right, well, I've got half of the guitarist's amp blasting low mids at me.
Yeah.
But because it's down on the floor, typical guitarists and even bass players, if I'm not taking a full stack, the amps are not at head level. They're down here and they're firing at your ankles.
100%, yeah.
So the high frequencies are already well since softened off.
Yeah.
So I had to make up for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, if I accidentally turn that up by 3 dB, suddenly that's gone. And, oh boy. So the other side of things with some of the musicians saying that they feel like closed in and that kind of thing, there are options around that, right?
Yeah, so there are, some people prefer to be completely isolated, and that's when you're kind of disconnecting yourself from the array around you, so you kind of filling in what you need. But there are actually like really good ambient options now. So one thing that definitely comes to mind is ACS. So they're a British company, make soft silicon in-ears that I've been working with for well over a year now, and they make wonderful in-ears and they sound really good. They've got an ambient version of their traditional in-ear monitors. So what it does, it basically raises the isolation from 26 dB up to 17. So what that does is it basically, rather than attenuating everything completely, it gives you a little bit back in. So it means that you can still hear drum kits in the room, you can still hear guitar amps and stuff on stage. So you're kind of still connected, but then you can just add in what you want again. And for some bands, especially people who are coming from Wedges, for example, want that kind of connection between the stage and what they're hearing. They don't want to be completely cut off from what they used to. I was speaking to the guys at ACS, and I think the reason it came about as well was they were working with quite a lot of session musicians at a high level who would be, on stage, and they'd want to be able to talk to somebody. If they're filling in for somebody on a tour and they want to lean over and say, oh, hey, what's this next bit? Stuff like that. Yeah. They want to be able to talk without taking their ears out, because obviously the show must always go on. It must always roll on and continue.
And as we know, once you take your in-ear out, it's a lot harder to get them back in. in the middle of a song.
100%.
Because while you're playing, you can kind of do that, but you definitely can't
Yeah.
in the middle of.
There's a knack, and if you've got the wrong hand, it's
Yeah, and in the middle of doing that, you've not got.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So again, you want to keep them in all the time. So they developed this filter, and it's a 17 dB filter, similar to what they've got in their earplugs, but a completely like redesigned version that works specifically with in-ears. That's got a flat frequency response. So it's like you're just wearing plugs.
That's the main thing I was going to say, because with regular ones, they don't just drop the level, do they? They change the frequency. They drop out higher frequencies, basically.
That's like a massive difference between like traditional earplugs, like health and safety ones, which are like, you know, the big yellow or orange neon stuff that you stick in at a gig, and musicians plugs, which have a filter in them, so they're designed to have a sound characteristic. And yeah, the 17 dB ones are, they've never been the wrong filter for anybody. From my experience from working with musicians even before I started DCA, that's kind of what everyone has,
right?
Like industry standards, because they are so flat. You know, they go low enough that you can still make decisions tonally in bass guitars and stuff like that, but you still feel connected.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. Like if you know your stage well enough and you want that kind of connection still, 17 dB at 100 decibels is still going to knock you down to what, like 87, 86. So you're back down from it being hella mega loud to like your 8 hours of safe time. So even if you're wearing those and nothing else, your sound.
To a point.
To a point.
Well, this is an interesting story for me. Is I played a show last week or 2 weeks ago for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
And because of the way that it was set up, they had supplied us with Wedges and a monster system. But because we were running on limited time and it turned out my in-ears were broken because I'm a clumsy idiot, I had to use the Wedges, but I had some 17 dB musicians earplugs. So I used the Wedges and it was okay. But there was some like low mid kind of, because we hadn't had time to tune the Wedges and everything, and they weren't quite pointed at my face, they were more pointed at my legs. There was a lot of a kind of kind of frequency in there that I was really struggling to hear past. And so I had drums in one ear that they were taken down, so that didn't hurt too much. But I was blowing my voice out because I was having to try and sing over this low mid resonance thing.
Interesting.
Because of the, I didn't have control of the system that night. Traditionally, when I would play shows, I would be the sound guy and I would turn up an hour early and
set it up. Same here.
But because it was at a wedding and the wedding was in the same big marquee and they were all in there, we couldn't do things like pink noise and bringing out the rooms because they wouldn't let us, because the guests were all in there.
Who wants to be like blasting their granny and great uncle with like, horrible noise for 10 minutes while someone sat there with iPads, going, oh, trust me, it'll be fine in a minute. Like babes are crying and also it's horrible. It's not the big day you imagine, right?
So what would have saved me there is having that 17 dB and the in-ears to try and correct for that, or just turn off the wedge and and bring the vocal in there. Exactly. Yeah, so I can see why that would work. I'm still on the fence as to whether I would be better as an ambience guy or a closed guy. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. So like, and again, like the whole reason why I started DCA is I want to be able to talk like candidly about stuff. So I work with ACS, they're wicked. There are definitely situations that I've been in like function situations, for example, where there have been times where I've wanted to turn the drum kit down wearing the ambience. So it was always, when I started, it was something I had to adjust to. But that's because I've always had fully enclosed in-ears, like no ambience whatsoever. Same thing. I'm an engineer. I like control. I like to go, what do I want to hear and when do I want to hear it? How do I want to hear it? Yeah. So then when I did that show, and it was a strange one, like similar to the room in here, it was quite a low ceiling and there was a drum kit on the stage and we were all kind of on top of each other. And we didn't have much time to sound check and all that kind of stuff. So there was a few compromises that had to be made. But actually now they have, ACS have brought in a blocking piece, which is super helpful. So
so you can fit it in that.
Exactly. Because it's soft silicon, you basically just hook out the ambient filter, which is in a little kind of brass ferrule, which looks really smart, put it up to one side and you can put in a 3D printed blanking plug and it takes you from 17 to 26. So I didn't have those then. So I was chatting to the guys about it. I was like, there's I like them, but this situation is not quite working. They're like, we have a solution for that now. Try this. So you've got best of both worlds, basically, which is really good. So actually, if we got an ambient set that, again, you can be connected to the room, you can mix front of house on them, you can do whatever, and then you could flick back to monitors to listen to mixes side of stage. You've got that kind of flexibility, but then if you wanted to be closed off, it's a rubbish room, I just want to be bass and vocal and a little bit of this guy, you can. Like, it's totally possible. And again, that's the thing, it's like the flexibility of it. If you've got one kind of set to rule them all, if you will, then you've got that's a good way of doing it, because sometimes adding ambience back in, it can be a pain in the ass. You end up having to set up extra mics, all sorts and then it's like another thing to worry about, and that's why people go, I'd rather not have in-ears, because I've just got a wedge and I'm open to the room and it works. Whereas I don't want to have to set up an extra mic, which in terms of like setting up an in-ear monitoring system against 2 wedges, in-ear monitoring system's pretty chilling. So setting up an extra mic and an in-ear set is probably still slightly easier. But that's a different conversation.
Well, if you're on the road as well, it's less weight that you have to move.
100%, yeah.
Because if anyone who's not been on the road, it's hard to describe just how heavy a monitor speaker is, because they have the amplifiers in them.
Huge.
Or a separate rack of amps, which is heavy.
Yeah.
And times that by every member of the band.
Yeah.
And suddenly that's bringing you over the weight limit and your van's scraping on the floor. As a band that I've toured with that have taken 4x12 guitar cabs, mostly for show. I mean, 2 of them were great, 2 of them were for show. But then you start adding wedges in and it's like, well, something's got to go.
Yeah.
Whereas the in-ear rack was just like 3U of one for everybody and an antenna distributor.
Exactly.
And that's it. And I could lift that with one hand.
Yeah.
And that, the consistency from that as well was absolutely fantastic.
Exactly.
The consistency is probably the thing for me. I mean, I suppose having the ambient thing plus the blocking is going to cost you a bit more. Yeah. But it's extra options always cost more.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think with the ACS stuff, it's an extra £50. So if you think £25 an ear, right? Like in terms of that, even on there, like the thing I do like about them is they've got a really affordable option, which is like $249. So the ambient version of that is $299. So for, you think of, we'll guitarist, for example, we'll buy like crazy pedals. If someone says, this delay pedal is really good, but it's £199, you go, I really need it. and you just buy it. And you'll just buy it. Whereas it, in token of like an investment in your ear, like that's a good amount of
it's the not sexy stuff that people don't want to spend the money on, isn't it?
Totally.
But it's you really should. You should spend money on the things that you hear first. Yeah. I've just got I've got a set of headphones at home, which there is a separate video either that's just come out or is coming out soon with the Odyssey MM500s. They cost more than my first car did, but I do this for a living and I need to be able to hear things super cleanly without cranking the volume up again, so I don't get hearing damage. Yeah. Because I don't do this for half an hour and then go and potter and do something else. I do it for an 8-hour day.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, if you're doing a show, I mean, generally speaking, you're not doing a show for 5 minutes. No. You're doing it for at least 30 if you're a support act. Yeah. Up to 2 hours or 3 hours. I've done 3.5 hour shows before. Yeah. And by the end of it, if your ears aren't right, you are punished.
Yeah, and the thing that you got to say as well, even if you're doing a 30-minute support slot, what time do you turn up at the venue? You turn up at 4 o'clock. You do a sound check for half an hour if you're lucky. Then you hang around in the loud venue while they're playing music, while another band's sound checking, and then you do your slot at 7:30 till 8, and then you hang around for half an hour, and then you watch the main band for a couple of hours. Like it's the stuff that you don't it's the stuff you don't think about. Yeah. That totally adds up. And and talking of a function gig, like you go, I'm doing a wedding in Gloucester, and it's a 2-hour set. Wicked. It's a 2-hour set, but it's a 14-hour day because you've got to get there, set up, and then you've got a sound check, and then you've got DJ, and you've got all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that gig I did last week, most of the hearing damage that I got was after we finished because the DJ went on, cranked the volume, and I'm trying to pack down with going.
With your head, like you're unplugging something and the head, like the speaker's like here. Yeah. Or like their subs are like throwing across stage and
I very quickly had to go and find my earplugs again. Yeah. And put them back in, and I was still shouting at the members of the band like, what?
Yeah.
Got your cable? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going. See you later. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Awful. DJs are a different conversation as well because they're using nice mastered tracks like cranked, and they don't have a tuned system either. So you've got like something that is generally really bright and high pitched and quite piercing that you're then having to deal with for. It's probably louder than when you're on stage as a full band, which is kind of hard to comprehend, but it's generally the case.
Yeah, you do see some DJs where they've got big cans, but they'll have one on, and it's like this can't be doing your hearing any good at all.
Yeah.
And how are you picking out the beats to match this in a very like volume battled environment?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, all the smart DJs that I see do have things like in-ears, like the guys who are playing like Ibiza rocks and things like that. The guys who are really at that level, they're smart.
Yeah.
Because you have to be at that point. I think that it gets to a point where there's only so many shows you can do before. I mean, if you've got the budget for a set of in-ears, which, like we said, it's not that much money in the grand scheme of things if it's your job.
Yeah.
Suddenly they can have a conversation during the day.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you need to, because being a full-time musician is as much admin as you end up like on stage, if not more, and rehearsal times and organising stuff and driving places and all this kind of, there's so much involved in it. It's when you commit to that kind of lifestyle, I think you have to kind of put your money where your mouth is at some point, invest in yourself. And that's not, it's kind of putting my musician's hat on. The best thing that I ever did was go to in-ears like 10 years ago, and then I went to the first set of customs and kind of moved from there. Started the passion that I've got now, but it's the best investment that I made in myself, other than a nice guitar and my Line 6 Helix and stuff like that, things that I use every single day. But my in-ears are the one thing that really kind of kept me going, and has made sure that I've got the career that I have now. Yeah, if you see what I mean.
Yes. Well, that's it. For me, it's indispensable, because if I go out playing a show, I might be mixing the next day.
Yeah.
And I need my ears to be on point for that.
You don't want like a 12k whistle.
Yeah.
Kind of just hanging around there for the whole day, where you're going, oh,
what's that E in the mix? That's not in the mix.
Yeah. Which channel's that on? Oh, I've paused
me.
everything and it's still there. Like, it's not right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because it's true. Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of like in-ears, obviously this will be your first set of customs.
Yes.
Which is super cool. Like, what will you be using them for predominantly?
Predominantly, I'll be playing live shows with them, but also being a monitor engineer.
Yeah.
So I'll need to be the thing about what I do as a monitor engineer is I kind of do dual roles. On a good day, when everybody's happy with their monitors, I have my own mix that I'm listening to and recording as a stream, with the hope that if we got everything lined up right, we can be live streaming with a mix that I'm doing. So the front of house guy's got his own thing going on. Yeah. Because of course, front of house at a big show, especially a rock or metal show, the sound they have coming out of the PA system is not a very good recorded mix. Yeah. If you know what I mean. Their requirements are very different. They'll be making the kick super punchy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're making larger than life sounds, where I'm trying to make more of a studio tone out of the same thing. So that's one requirement, because then that can go out with a bit of ambience mixed in from microphones or from a virtual room reverb or whatever to go on a live broadcast. But also, if anything goes wrong with anybody and they're pointing at me going and like if they can communicate well, great, but if they can't, they're in the middle of singing or playing or whatever, I need to be able to click a couple of buttons, tune into their frequency and hear it and go, that's what's wrong, and then know immediately what isn't right. So be able to differentiate that from the background wash of
everything. Yeah. And I think the thing is as well, when especially if you've got two guitarists in a band and a bass player, like their mixes are going to be fairly similar, but there's going to be nuances between them. Obviously, which guitar is loudest, what are they? But what they're listening to in terms of the band is probably going to be quite similar. So you do need to be able to lock in and kind of really judge what the differences are in a loud environment. So it'll be interesting. Like, I've got some demo stuff that I want you to try,
Right.
and I'm gonna get you to listen to and get your opinion on, because I've got an idea of what I think you might need, but I'm not gonna say a word until we kind of got your opinion on it. But that's cool. So will you ever use them for, like, obviously you're a 21st century musician, right? You are the epitome of what this industry now looks like. You play live, you record, you produce, you engineer, you educate,
all the
content
things.
creator, all the things, right? So I mean, do you think you'll be using them in any other environment other than, like, kind of a live setting, or what do you reckon?
I wouldn't say no. I mean, in my own studio, that's less likely because I've got all the control. But if I'm at somebody else's studio and I'm doing session work, then absolutely I would need my own system to be able to do that. I mean, I actually track drums when I play drums and vocals with my in-ears. Because not a big fan of over-ear headphones. I find there's way too much spill.
Yeah, of course.
On vocals, the spill problem is that it bleeds onto the microphone because I'm compressing the living daylights out of the mic.
Yeah.
So the slightest little bit of from the headphones becomes a big problem.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And with drums, I've found that anything other than a really good isolation, I can't pick out the click.
Yeah.
And so what I tend to do at the moment, because I don't have customs, is I wear my in-ears and then I put ear defenders over the top.
Right.
You know, the ones that people go shooting with. Because that's 30 dB of isolation on top of the non-customs.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that I can reliably pick out the tempo.
Nice.
And that's not because of my ability as a drummer. I'm not amazing as a drummer. That's because I physically can't pick it out.
Yeah.
And even, like, some drummers say, oh yeah, no, I'm on time when the click disappears. Which is a nice idea because the transient of their hit is on the transient of the click.
Spot on, yeah.
But I don't accept that. I don't like that idea. I like the idea of still being able to pick out the click because that gives me the confidence.
Yeah.
Because they're at different tones. The snare and the click are at different tones. And if I can pick them out independently and say, yes, that was on, that was on, that was on.
Yeah.
That is great for me because that's always been my number one priority when I play drums is not be flashy, it's be on time.
Be consistent.
Yeah. And that isolation is a big thing for me because some of the stuff that I play, it's not just AC/DC, it's weird time signatures and stuff. And if I lose track of what I can hear, then I lose track of where I am. Not because I've not memorized the part, but because I physically can't pick out.
Exactly.
Especially with all these instruments less than 2 feet away from me being battered.
Yeah.
Because as a rock and metal drummer, you don't tickle these things.
No.
So, like, if you measured how loud a snare drum is from a drummer's ear, I reckon that a good rim shot might be 120 dB.
Yeah, it will be very loud.
And I'm supposed to pick out what's going on around that, even with in-ears in. So they would have to be really well fitted.
Yeah, exactly.
So, those are other requirements for me.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. It'll be interesting to see, because I mean, like, once we've got your set, it'll be interesting to see what you kind of feedback. Because I know for me, I use my, similar to you mixing on your headphones and stuff a lot. Like, I predominantly do everything that I ever need to do on in-ears. Like, I studied sound engineering at uni. I did all of my monitoring on headphones because I couldn't physically have a set of physical monitors in the room, or I had no space for it.
Right.
So I've always, like, similar to what you've done, I've kind of adapted my style to do that.
Right.
But it's wicked because it means that then even if I'm in a coffee shop or on a train or something like that and I need to get something done, I've learnt what they sound like and I know how they react, so I can kind of still make decisions. I'm just in my own tiny little isolated bubble.
Yes. I've done that before for things like video editing, but I wonder if it's just the quality of the in-ears that I've had. I've never been able to trust them.
Interesting.
Because they were there as a tool to be able to get me through live shows. And if you look at some of the frequency responses of what I've had in the past, they go woo all over the show.
Yeah.
And for what I was using them for, I didn't really care. But for doing mixing, the ones that I had were, for me, no bueno. Because what I was doing at the time, I went with the over-ear things, and I've got a pair of Sennheisers that I've had for 15 years now that every piece has been replaced. They are the ship of Theseus.
Oh, nice.
But they've been, because they would be in my bag and they would get battered and they would get bashed around. And,
Yeah.
But that was the price I had to pay, is I always had to carry these big, scary things around with me, and it would take up bag space. And yes, but that was because, the in-ears that I had were not up to par.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I didn't even get in-ears until quite late on. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I wasn't doing session work and shows until I was mid-20s.
Gotcha.
So that's another thing. I was in a band when I was 19, 20, but I stopped doing that.
Yeah.
And I've not really been in an originals band since.
Okay.
So that was a difference for me with most musicians who really kind of cherish their original stuff.
Yeah.
I don't. I do this.
Yeah.
I take other people's music and make it good.
Interesting.
So for me, that was less of a concern, but I completely appreciate that anybody who that is their main thing, they need them from day one.
But like you say, it's interesting. You've got in that sense, you've got quite a specific set of requirements, and the fact that you now you need your ears. Not only if you do like original stuff, you trust your own ears, don't you, to make the sound that you're looking for?
Yeah.
Whereas you need to trust your ears to find the sound that other people are looking for.
Yes.
So it's a different level of referencing, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like another layer.
I need a complete blank slate. That's the thing, which, it's a weird kind of thing that I need to be able to. This is why those the new over-ears that I've got, the Odysseys, they got what, £1,700 or whatever. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot. But I need them to be so reference.
Yeah.
That when a different band, like an acoustic act and then a prog metal act, and all come in and go, these are the references, make me sound like that.
Yeah.
That it works across the board, and it's up until now, especially, like I say, some of the kind of not low tier but low to mid tier, I guess, in-ears that I've had from the usual suspects. Have been fine, but like maybe they'd have a big bass bump at one frequency, or they'd have a kind of a big high mid spike somewhere to try and make that cut through.
Of course.
Which, that was their purpose.
I
think they were designed with, because there's always a compromise at the lower end of kind of with the lower end, not just in-ears, but any sound device.
Totally.
The compromise is, what do you actually need this for? And so we're going to focus on that thing.
It's super interesting you say that, because like there's also, again, like what we were speaking about earlier, when people are turning up to a gig and going, I've got my £20, £50, £40 Amazon in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
They're called in-ear monitors, but they're not necessarily designed for musicians. There's a whole world, like there's a whole world, they call it chi-fi. So it's like Chinese mass-produced hi-fi stuff.
Right.
And there's loads of brands that fit into that. And they do sound good, but they're not designed to react to uncompressed live music in the way that you would need them to as a vocalist, as a drummer, as a guitarist, as a bass player, as whatever. And
do you wonder if a lot of these kind of cheaper Chinese in-ears are basically just regular earbuds but shaped different with a bit of a big blob on the back? Without not a conspiracy theory, just that's business for a lot of the Far East companies. I think it is kind of, this looks like that, but we can sell it to you for 1/10 of the price. And for a lot of people, that is kind of what they need, because they're not musicians, or they're not doing what we do, where you need that level of performance.
Lots of people just enjoy listening to, like, audiophiles love listening to stuff, and if they've got something that's kind of cheap and sounds great, there's a whole world of that, and people like love getting into like engineers do, getting into like the intricacies of how stuff sounds, and that's really cool. But as a musician, there is definitely a different set of requirements. And I would say, and it's like similar to what we were saying earlier, if you get a good set of well-sealed set of in-ears, and you're in a band or in an environment where you want to use in-ears, and that is the most affordable and best way for you to get into it, go for it. Like, that is my whole thing is, I'm a musician before anything else. And if you're on stage and you need that feedback, go wild, like, do it. We've all done it. We've all had a get out of jail free card for in-ears on stage. But I would say as well, there's definitely there is a step up in quality, and you know when you go to customs and stuff like that, and there is a difference in the way that they're tuned and they're built. So for example, ACS's stuff is really neutral sounding. Like they're really open and transparent with me when we started with them. So I went in, I went down the factory, and I met Andy and Johnny, the directors, and kind of was like, what do you do? Show me what you do. And obviously, as an engineer, I'm interested. So they showed me all the graphs, and it's like their in-ears are really neutral and flat. They extend really low, and they've got a really nice balanced top end. There's the character of them is a reference in it, essentially. That you get what you need, and it translates really well to the live environment. Whereas if you've got something like a set of the cheaper Amazon ones, if you've got a good mix, they'll sound exciting and they'll sound really good.
Yeah.
But if you've got a bad mix, they'll start poking stuff out in weird ways that you don't understand. And then you go, well, to compensate this, I'll turn it up a little bit because it sounds a bit better. And that's when you're going into that whole area of like, I've got a spike at 2K, which is actually, really quite biting, but then your ears go into that kind of safety mode and you kind of forget about it and you crack on because the adrenaline takes over. And that's the kind of bad practice that, for me, as a musician and engineer, and like, again, as DCA, I want to wrangle that bit out. I want to educate people so that they know that when that's happening, to kind of rein it back in. And there's loads of options. And that's the thing. There's tons of options now. It's knowing what's the best one that works best for you, really, I think.
Right.
But no, without being disparaging about stuff, not only the mass-produced stuff that's kind of throwaway, again, from like an environmental point of view, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I personally think that's kind of bad. I think we should have like one piece of kit that you invest in, you look after, and it works. But if that's what you can afford, and if that's what you're working with, then there's no reason why you shouldn't do it. But take the time to make it isolate well and learn how it works. Yeah. And then when you're ready, you can go to something else if you want to, once you know how it works. But I don't know. It's interesting. I would encourage anybody who's watching this to go out and look at the forums for the kind of Chi-Fi world and kind of Google certain specs of in-ears that you're looking for. You might find that some of them, there's dudes that tear them apart, and it's really funny to read their reviews. And like, I've done lots of research, and there's lots of kind of times where the model has been built, but actually they'll be like, oh, it's got 4 balanced armatures and a dynamic driver and stuff, and it sounds really well spec'd. But actually you might find that when people tear them apart, 2 of those speakers in each ear aren't actually connected or soldered onto anything. So you're actually only getting 3 rather than the 6 speakers that you're getting and stuff like that, which is wild. But again, it's like that kind of quality control. If they both balance, then that's fine. They're gone, and they'll sound fine to you. But then it kind of comes into is that placebo effect kind of thing on how many drivers is right. But it's an interesting conversation. Definitely go and check it out. Read the forums. They are interesting, but don't believe what the forums always say.
Oh, absolutely. Well, never believe what anybody says in isolation.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Do your research, kids. I mean, everything that we say today, we're trying our best to illustrate and educate. But if you can get 5 more opinions, do that.
100%.
That's what I've always done.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, hey, that's what YouTube is for.
100%.
That's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you find that out of five people that you find videos on, 1 disagrees and 4 agree, and they're all slightly different, but they all agree, there's probably something in that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So there you have it, everybody. The end of part 1, and my in-ears have arrived. It's taken several weeks, but they are here. And in the next part of this, because I know this has already gone on far too long, we're going to be talking about custom in-ears compared to non-customs and how the seal can affect what you hear using measurement equipment and using actual noises in the studio. So stay tuned for that. Big thanks to Miles from DCA for talking forever with me. Big thanks to everybody on Patreon for supporting us. You all know who you are. The list is on the screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.